right, welcome everybody to practicing the pause with Phil on this Wellness Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Thanks for tuning in. Let's give it just a minute here. I know I'm just a minute early, it looks like, but we'll wait for some other folks to hopefully join us here. I'll pull up my share screen. I said, hope everybody's having a good Wellness Wednesday today. Glad you all could join in. This is Practicing the Pause with Phil. Uh, I am Philip Boyce. I'm a peer support specialist at the R3 Recovery Center here in Wilkesboro for Wilkes Recovery Revolution. And we do this every Wednesday. I teach this course on wellness. We learn what wellness is and what it's about and how it applies to our life. Just how to have a better quality of life. And I think wellness helps us to do that. So I'm thankful that you're here and that you're tuning in. I'm trying to get all my buttons and whistles together here. Uh, Technology is pretty good when everything works. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult to get everything together though. So I'm pulling things up here and we'll get started. But again, welcome everyone to Practicing the Pause. Like I said, I am Philip Boyce, a peer navigator, peer support specialist at the R3 Recovery Center. And we talk a little bit about wellness here and what it means, how we apply that to our life here. So thanks again for tuning in. And to get started, I like to kind of settle in. It's good to just kind of settle ourselves. This is a time where we can just implement self-care. We can be mindful of where we're at. We might have had a stressful week. You might have had a stressful morning. Uh, and things just kind of might got off to a rocky start. And so this is where we can really just kind of unwind and kind of tune in here. And it's how we like to do that is by practicing the pause. And what that means is I like doing a breathing exercise and practicing mindfulness. If you're not sure what mindfulness is, I'd heard about it, but I really want some clarity on what mindfulness meant. I want to really be able to define what mindfulness is, and so I can do that for you here. We've done this in the past couple of weeks, but I think it's good to go over it again so we can really have this good understanding of what is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, and that's what we want to do here now at this time. We want to be fully present. We want to be aware of what we're doing. We want to turn off any distractions, and we really want to tune in. And that's what mindfulness is. It's bringing this awareness to what we do. It's this awareness of where we are and what we're doing. It's mindfulness. It's not being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. It's so easy to be overwhelmed sometimes and overly reactive of things that goes on around us. When things don't work out right or something irritates us or bothers us, we get off to a rocky start there, in our day, or something happens that we just didn't feel like we were prepared for. Mindfulness can help us with those things. And so mindfulness really is, it's being fully present, being aware of where we are and what we're doing. And so it's not about being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. And mindfulness is more. It's not just about being in your head. Mindfulness is something that we practice. That's why this course is called Practicing the Pause. Practice the pause. It's something that we work on. It's something that we hope to get better at. We practice. Anything that we want to do and do well, it does take practice. And mindfulness is one of these things that we need to be able to practice to help us, with the events of the day, with life and all of life's struggles with its ups and downs. Mindfulness can really help us with that. And so we practice mindfulness, and this is how I like to begin each course here, is by being aware of what we're doing and being mindful of what we're doing. And we can practice mindfulness. One of the ways we can practice mindfulness is by sitting down for a formal meditation practice, and we do some of that here, and I'll do some of these practices today. But that's one way that we can practice mindfulness is just by sitting down for a formal meditation practice. You can also practice mindfulness by being more aware of, intentionally being aware of the things you do each day. Nearly every task we perform in a day, nearly every task that we perform in a day, we can practice mindfulness, whether it be brushing our teeth or whether it's eating lunch. There's was one time that I went out to get some food at a restaurant, and I brought a coupon. That's the whole reason why I went. It was Jersey Mike's subs, and I brought a coupon to use for a sub at this place. And I was standing in line, and my phone went off, right? And so I began talking on the phone, and sure enough, uh, I end up not using that coupon. The whole reason why I went to the store was to use that coupon. Yes, I was hungry. Yes, I wanted a sub, but mainly the purpose was because I had a coupon. But because I got on my phone and got distracted, because I wasn't mindful, I wasn't aware, I wasn't taking that time out for myself to have lunch. And this is intentional practice that we all must do. We must take this time out for ourselves. And that was a reminder to me that, hey, I needed to slow down. I needed to take that time out for myself, not get on the phone, but take that 30 minute, take that hour lunch break just for me and be mindful of what I'm doing. Mindful of I'm taking a lunch, mindful that I'm getting some peace and quiet at this time, mindful that it's okay not to be distracted, just to take that time for yourself. And I think if we take that time for ourselves, we're going to be better equipped to handle the situations that come our way. And so we can practice mindful with different events that we carry out during the day, whether it be brushing our teeth or eating lunch or even talking with friends. How good it is, to turn the phone off when you're talking with friends, that you're fully engaged with that conversation. You're letting that person know that, hey, you are important here now in this conversation. You are important, and I'm taking this time to spend with you. I'm listening. I'm doing active listening. I'm practicing mindfulness here in this conversation. So we can do it mindfulness with almost any task during the day, whether it be brushing teeth or eating lunch or talking with friends or even exercising, just being aware of what you're doing. That's something that I've had to practice when I'm walking in the woods. Right, I'm exercising. I'm walking through the woods. I got to be mindful of where I'm setting my feet, because there can be roots, there can be branches, there can be different things in the path. And if I'm not focusing, if I'm not aware of what's going on, taking each step, if I'm on the phone, I can get easily distracted or something like that. I might hurt myself. I might injure myself. So it's good to be mindful, even when exercising. All these tasks can be done more mindfully, more mindfully. And so practicing some of these meditation, practicing some of these exercises can help us to do that better. And I think it can help us get a better grasp of the things that we do each day. When we are mindful of our actions, we pay more attention to what we are doing. It's the opposite of just going through the motions. Instead, you're tuned into your senses. You're noticing your thoughts and emotions. And this can also help with emotional regulation. Sometimes we can feel like we're too stressed, we're on some highs and lows. Mindfulness can help us with our emotions. We can be better tuned in to noticing our thoughts and emotions and our senses. It can help us to regulate our emotions better, I believe. And so you might be saying, well, when do I do this? How can I do this? I'm just so busy. But I want us to understand here that by building mindfulness into our daily life, you can practice mindfulness even when you're too busy to meditate. So it's not just meditation, it's being intentional, it's noticing each action that you're doing, being mindful there in the present moment, noticing what you're doing, bringing awareness to the moment there. But learning how to meditate is key. I think this is why I love doing this. In the middle of the week on a Wednesday, it kind of breaks up the week, and it's this good reminder that, hey, I need to be reminded to pause. I need to be reminded to take care of myself and to remember some of these things and to practice some of these tools, and I believe it will help us as we go along through our week, so we won't get so bogged down, so we won't feel so overwhelmed and stressed out. This is important to do, practicing mindfulness, practicing this pause. And so, one of the ways we do that is by meditation. And if you're just beginning, it can help just to choose a short amount of time. It doesn't. It's not all about how long you meditate for. I have found that by practicing mindfulness and meditation, that I can meditate for longer periods of times, but that takes practice. So if you're just beginning, a short time is okay. Maybe you just want to choose 5 to 10 minutes, and maybe you want to set a timer, and eventually you can kind of see how your time can increase with meditation. That it can eventually get longer as you continue to practice it. And maybe you want to set a time. Maybe it's at the beginning of the day or in the evening, somewhere where you can kind of quiet yourself. You can get into a place where it's nice and quiet. You can turn off distractions. And what I like to continue to say and to repeat is that you need to be intentional with these things. Nobody's going to really look after your self-care for you. It's self-care, called self-care for a reason. It's for yourself. For yourself, you're going to need to set a time for yourself to be able to practice these things. And I think the quality of your life will improve dramatically, I believe. And so you're going to need to set a time, that you can do this. Maybe it's in the morning, maybe it's in the evening, or one or the other. If you feel like your life is just busy and you have a little time, I want you to note this down. Make a mental note here that doing some is better than doing none. Doing some is better than doing none. Make sure that you're able to get a little bit of this time in, and hopefully as you do that, you'll reap the benefits from it. You'll see how much you enjoy it and how much better you feel, and you'll want to do more. But remember, doing some is better than doing none. And so when you get a little bit of space and time, you can do a bit more. And it's good too to find a good spot, a good place, whether it be in your home or somewhere where you can get away, where it's nice and quiet, where there's not too much clutter. And it's good to find this place, to create the space that you can go to. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I like to create an environment for wellness, for this time of pause. And I drink tea. A lot of who's joined this before. I like my tea. It helps me to settle my nerves. It helps me to quiet down. It helps me to center myself and to lose. Well, you got like a lot of stress or anxiety. That's something I can suffer from. I found some teas that help. And so it's learning these things, what you can do to really create this space, this environment to practice mindfulness and wellness. And so, you might want to check your lighting. I've got lights in the past that helps with stress anxiety. I've used it for my office. I've got some lights that change colors, and you can change how much light is put out with those. And so it can be good even to focus on what kind of lighting is around you. That can help, with this practice. But it's suggested that you leave the lights on or you sit in natural light. And so you can probably see behind me, I've got some sun that's coming in. But it's good to leave the lights on. When I was first practicing meditation and mindfulness, I was so relaxed. I felt myself, kind of dozing off and going to sleep. And maybe you've had that issue before. It seems common. I've asked a teacher who was teaching meditation about it, because that's what I was kind of struggling with at the beginning. He said you can even do walking meditation. So if you feel like you're just kind of dozing off as you go through mindfulness, as you're practicing meditation, maybe you just want to stand up. You can stand up and do some maybe walking meditation. That might help out. But that's why it's important to have some lights on. Leave the lights on or sit in natural light. You can even sit outside too. I love meditating outside. If I go for a walk or go to maybe up Stone Mountain or some place where I really love the scenery. I can do some meditation out there as well, as long as I'm not going to be bothered by people getting too close or walking by. If I can find a nice place, I like to meditate outside. So choose a place with little distraction. Choose a place with little distraction. As we do this, you might want to be thinking of a place, or maybe even getting your environment ready around you, so you can be able to uh, practice mindfulness and do this to the best of your ability here. Your posture is also important. I've talked about that, in the past. It's good to sit in a nice, comfortable place. You know, uh, you might want to make sure that you're sitting up straight. Not nothing. You don't want to be too rigid or just uncomfortable. You really want to find a comfortable place to sit and a comfortable posture. And that's this posture practice that we look at to begin meditation. You just want to stabilize yourself and find a moment of relaxation before going into meditation. So check your posture, make sure you're in a comfortable place. You've got a comfortable seating arrangement. And if you got any injuries or physical difficulties, be mindful of that as well. You can modify, your posture. If you find out that sitting in one spot too long is going to irritate an injury or some physical difficulties that you have, you just be mindful of that. And so, you know, uh, as we begin, I invite you to find a good position, this posture, find a good place to sit, whether it be a chair or, maybe you have a meditation cushion, or maybe you're outside on a park bench. Just find a spot that gives you a stable, solid seat, not perching or hanging back. Notice too, as you get into this position, this posture, notice what your legs are doing. If you're on a cushion on the floor, you can cross your legs comfortably in front of you. Uh, if you already do some kind of seated yoga posture, go ahead. If you're on a chair, it's good if the bottoms of your feet are touching the floor. And I've heard this for purposes of being grounded. You know, uh, some people choose to take their shoes off, and they have their bare feet up against the ground. Their feet touching the floor. That's a good way to be grounded. That kind of helps as you go through meditation. And so, like I said, be mindful of your posture. You want to be straight, and you want to have sit up straight. You want to straighten, but don't stiffen up your upper body. Make sure it's relaxed. The spine has a natural curvature, so you really want to kind of do what's natural there and just be there. Notice what your head and your shoulders are doing. Notice how you feel there in your head and shoulders. We're going to do this body meditation that we can really kind of go through and kind of see what's in our body, sense what's going on in our body. But just be mindful of what your head and shoulders can do, and you just want to kind of comfortably rest them on top of your vertebrae. Just kind of let it be there, and you want to situate your upper arms parallel to your upper body. Notice what your hands are doing. You can just let your hands drop on the tops of your legs with your upper arms at your side. Your hands will land in the right spot. So you just want to kind of rest your hands on your leg there. Too far forward will make you hunch, and too far back will make you stiff. So just tuning in to the strength of your body. You want to bring mindfulness and awareness and just tune into your body. You don't want to be too tight or too loose. Just kind of relax as you go into this checking your posture here. Maybe drop your chin just a little bit and let your gaze fall gently forward. You may even want to rest your eyes. Maybe you've been staring at a screen for too long. And, you can do that now. You just want to maybe just let your eyelids lower. If you feel the need, you may lower them completely, but it's not necessary to close your eyes when meditating, but you can. You can simply let what appears before your eyes be there without focusing on it. And just be there for a few moments there. Right now, I invite you just to relax. Relax. Like I said, maybe it's been a stressful week. Maybe it's just good just to slow down. Maybe you feel like you've been going and going and going. Sorry about that. One second. Alexa, turn off. I'm sorry about that. I do apologize as I'm inviting to relax. I don't know what I've got an Alexa in the other room, and I don't know what she heard. Hopefully, she doesn't hear me again. As we go into this relaxation here, but I invite you there to be just relaxed here for the next few moments. Bring your attention there to your breath. I want you to breathe in. I said maybe you've had a hectic week so far. Maybe it's just been the hustle and bustle and you've just been rushed, it seems like. Right now, I invite you to pause. Just relax. I want you to bring your attention there to your breath uh, and just kind of sense what your body's doing. Maybe you can feel some of that tension there in your shoulders or in your neck. You can really just kind of sense that, wow, it's been a hectic week. You just been rushed. And so I invite you right now just to relax and practice the pause. Continue to breathe in. Nice, slow, steady breath in. And just release that. I like to be mindful of even the sound of the breath as it exits out my lungs, out of my mouth. Then be mindful of you as be mindful of the breath as you breathe it in. Let it circulate there through your lungs. As you breathe in, be mindful of breathing in. Bring awareness to your breath as you breathe in. And just tell yourself that you're practicing self-care. You're practicing wellness. You're being kind to yourself. Now, by bringing awareness to the breath, the in and out breaths. Some say feel your breath. Feel your breath. That's really bringing awareness to it. It's bringing mindfulness. Some say follow it. That's what we were just doing there with listening to the sound as you breathe in. Feel the air as it enters into your lungs and then out. Follow the breath. Follow the breath as it goes out and as it goes in. There's some versions of this practice put more emphasis on the out breath. Sometimes I do when, I really feel stressed. It's just letting that go. I like to, when I breathe in, I like to breathe in goodness. I like to breathe in positivity. I like to breathe in, just good thoughts there of, just being mindfulness of maybe blessings, maybe it's gratitude. Breathe that in, and then as you're releasing, let out the stress or worries or maybe some problems or troubles that you experience. Just let that go with the out breath. That's where we practice a pause, is in breath and then that pause and then the out breath, practicing the pause. You can draw your attention to the physical sensation of the breathing. Like I said, sometimes it's listening to the sounds of breathing in, just bringing that awareness to the in breath, and then maybe that release there. You're making a sound as you release. You're drawing attention there. You're bringing awareness to the physical sensation of breathing as you feel it, the air in your lungs. Maybe it's a nice cool air as you breathe in and out. The air moving through your nose or mouth, the rising and falling of your belly. And before, I've also said in the past that you can put your hand. Sometimes this helps. If you place your hand on your chest, you can really feel the lungs filling up with air. You put one hand on the chest and maybe one hand there on the belly, and then as you breathe out, maybe feel your belly. You don't want to be too tense. You don't want to be too firm, just pushing out. You just want to be natural as you do it. But sometimes just placing the hands on the chest, top of your chest there, and then on the belly, you can just really feel it. So you're being in tune. You're tuning in to those physical sensations as you breathe. It's helpful to choose a focal point with each breath. You can mentally note breathing in and breathing out, breathing in and breathing out. And maybe there for your practice, maybe you like to listen to waves. I like to be be mindful of the noises that the waves bring in and bring out, the crashing of the waves in and out, the tide as it goes in and out. That helps me with the circulation of the breath, just to have that in my mind there, of just a circular nation of breathing in and breathing out. That's circular nature, breathing in and breathing out. So when we meditate, something happens as we're breathing in, breathing out, as we're being mindful of our breath. A lot of times our mind will wander. It'll start thinking about the next task to do, or just different things. Maybe, the mind will just use the imagination, and, you start thinking of things. The next thing you know, you forgot where you're at. You forgot that you're in the moment, in the present, concentrating and being aware of your breath. And that's okay. The mind does that. The mind is always at play. It'll naturally wander. And so when you find that your mind wanders, just as you're aware of that if your mind wandering, it's okay. Just go back to your breath. Go back to that in breath and out breath, and stay with your breath. Follow the breath in and out. There's no need to block or eliminate thinking. When you get around to noticing your mind wandering in a few seconds, in a minute, 5 minutes, just gently return your attention to your breath. You might feel that you've got an itch, or you might feel some uncomfortability. And as you feel that, I try to say, before you react to that, before you itch or move, just practice the pause. Practice the pause before you move your body or scratch an itch. And then, as you're aware of that, as you're aware of your body being uncomfortable, or that there's an itch there, as you bring awareness to that, then with intention, shift at a moment you choose, allowing space, allowing that pause between what you experience and what you choose to do. Especially at the beginning, when I was learning meditation and mindfulness, at the beginning, my mind would seem like it wandered, a lot more often than what it does now. And so maybe you feel like you're having that issue of your mind wandering constantly. It's normal. Instead of wrestling with or engaging with those thoughts as much, just practice observing without needing to react. I've used the illustration of dead leaves floating down a stream, and you're that bystander. You're just watching those thoughts go down the stream. You don't have to put a story to them. You don't have to narrate those thoughts. You're just observing. You're observing. We're the observers. We can observe our thoughts without needing to react. Just sit and pay attention. As hard as it is to maintain, that's all there is. Just come back over and over again to your breathing, being mindful of the breath, bringing awareness to your breath. Come back over and over again without judgment or expectation. This isn't about earning any gold stars, about being the best meditator or anything like that. This is a practice. It's a practice. And so now, when you're ready, just gently lift your gaze. If your eyes are closed, open them and take a moment and notice any sounds in your environment. Just notice them. Notice how your body feels right now. Do you feel more relaxed? Notice your thoughts and emotions. Do you feel less stressed, more at peace? And then just pausing, practicing the pause, pausing for a moment. Decide how you would like to continue on with your day. And that's it. That's the practice. It's often been said that it's very simple, but it's not necessarily easy. The work is just to keep doing it, keep practicing it, and results will accrue. You'll find that you're getting better and better at it as you stay with it, stick with it. I said it's so good to do this on Wednesdays, because it is at the middle of the week, and I think it's good to have this reminder to slow down, and practice the pause. I was going to go into some of these other uh, meditations, but I think that was good for today. Hopefully you felt uh, the power of it just by practicing those. And so right now I would like to look at these self-assessment tools. These self-assessment tools. We've been taking a look at some of these, and it's good to look at these self-assessment tools because it can really help us to learn what wellness is and each of its dimensions. Here at the R3 Recovery Center, we look at all 8 dimensions of Samsha's model there, and these we can go through them here. Oh, there are different dimensions of our wellness. One can be emotional wellness. 2 is environmental wellness. 3 is intellectual. 4 is occupational. 5 is physical. 6 is social. And as we go through these different dimensions here, it gives us a score. And so I said there's one emotional. We looked at that before. You can find all these on YouTube if you want to learn a little bit more about what wellness is and some of these dimensions. You can go and look at these. Uh, these are the different dimensions here that we look at. I think last time we looked at occupational wellness. And so today I would like to look at physical wellness. A lot of times when we think of wellness, this is what we think of. We think about physical, but wellness is so much more than just physical. As you've seen there's emotional wellness, there's environmental wellness, there's intellectual wellness, there's occupational wellness. And so today I would like to look at this physical wellness. And, maybe we have taken a look at this in the past, and that's okay. We'll look at it again here, just kind of review and kind of see where we're at there on this wellness spectrum. How are we doing it with this dimension of wellness, physical wellness? And so if you got a sheet of paper, I invite you to go ahead and get that out. Get a piece of paper. It could be a scratch piece of paper. It might be a journal that you're keeping here as you're watching this wellness class that you're keeping up with. And that way, it's good to have because then you can kind of see if you're improving on some of these dimensions. And so here with physical wellness, this one looks at um, making choices. This is what physical wellness is. It's making choices to avoid harmful habits and practice behaviors that support your physical body, health, and safety. Again, physical wellness is making choices to avoid harmful habits and practice behaviors. That's what we're doing today, practicing behaviors that support your physical body, health, and safety. And so here's a couple questions. We're going to number our paper. If you have a piece of paper there, or like I said, if you have that journal, I think it'd be great if you have that journal. Go ahead on that piece of paper and number that paper 1 through 7. 1 through 7. And we're going to look today at our physical wellness. How well are we doing with this dimension of physical wellness? And so the first question is, do you engage in physical exercise regularly? Regularly. Do you engage in physical exercise regularly? Here, it's for example, it's 30 minutes at least 5 times a week, or 10,000 steps a day. I noticed that's something that I was slacking in. I like to go and walk, at least twice a week there, and they're recommending, at least 30 minutes for 5 times a week. Well, often when I'm walking, it can be for an hour and a half, 2 hours, so 10,000 steps a day. And with the technology that we have on our phone, it can track those. It can track how many steps are we taking, in a day or in a week. And so maybe that's something that you want to look at. Are you engaged in physical exercise regularly? Here's just one example here of 30 minutes at least 5 times a week, or 10,000 steps a day. And I've heard too that most people, like doctors and physicians, recommend at least 30 minutes of exercise a day. At least 30 minutes of exercise a day. So how are you doing with that question number 1 there? Uh, are you doing that regularly? Exercise regularly, physical exercise regularly? If you're doing pretty good with it, You can put usually. If you're doing it sometimes, you can put a 3. If you're doing it rarely, you can put a 2. If you're doing it never, and put a 1. Like I said, we're looking today at our physical wellness, and this will kind of help us to kind of see where we're at with our physical wellness. This is part of wellness as a whole. Physical wellness is just part of it. This is one of the dimensions out of 8. All right, what about question number 2? This deals with our sleep. How's your sleeping habits? How are your sleeping patterns? Here for question number 2, it says I get 6 to 8 hours of sleep each night. How are you doing in the sleep department there? Are you getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep each night? Um, if you do that, on quite a consistent basis, put a number 4 there for usually. If you're doing it for, maybe 4 out of 5 times out of the week, maybe sometimes, uh, I should say 5 out of 7, right? 6 out of 7 days of the week. I don't know. Not just a work week, right? We got to be sleeping on the weekends as well. Just 7 days a week. Maybe you're doing 6 to 7 days out of the week. You're getting 6 to 8 hours. Maybe that's sometimes. Rarely, maybe you're doing it 2, 3 days out of the week. You're getting that amount of sleep. Or man, you're just struggling in the sleep department. You hardly ever get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Go ahead and put down a 1. Like I said, this isn't going to be graded. I'm not going to ask you to email these in to me or put them in your mailbox and send them to me. This is for your own personal uh, personal uh, you know, inventory, kind of see where you're at with this. So, how are you doing in the sleep department? All right, question number 3. I protect myself and others from getting ill. Yeah, we have gone over this. I remember that question. I protect myself and others from getting ill. That can be washing your hands or covering your mouth if you're coughing. Uh, Maybe it's just your environment too. A lot of these can blend into these other dimensions. What does it look like there for you protecting yourself and others from getting ill? Are you practicing good hygiene? Are you washing your hands? Are you covering your mouth, and then after you cover your mouth for a cough or whatever, do you wash your hands? uh, how well are you doing that? Protecting yourself and others from getting ill. 1 never, 2 sometimes, or 2 rarely, 3 sometimes, 4 usually. You can think about maybe some other examples for doing that, as if you're protecting yourself and others from getting ill. Question number 4 is abstaining from drinking alcohol, or if you do drink, do you aim to keep it uh, at a level that's below 0.06? Uh, because it depends on where you're at with your recovery. We there at the R3 Recovery Center, we support all different paths. I know some practice abstinence, like myself, but others, might have other different problems there. But from a health perspective, as from a physical wellness perspective here, it's important to watch how much you drink. Doctors have looked at that, and if you drink, you know, more than uh, what they suggest that any person should drink on a daily basis, that can cause different health problems. So here's asking, do you keep it at a level that's recommended there? Those 1 never, 2 rarely, 3 sometimes, 4 usually. Question number 5, and this can be a huge struggle for many as well. And this pertains to using tobacco products or other drugs. Do you avoid using tobacco products or other drugs? Like I said, this is coming from a physical wellness dimension perspective of watching what we choose into our bodies and what we choose to do. Um, like I said, the physical wellness as defined is making choices to avoid harmful habits and practice behaviors that support your physical body health and safety. And I know the difficulties with um, not not choosing to use any tobacco products and stuff. And it really depends on where you're at. This isn't given an A or a B, or it's not graded here. This is just for something for us personally to look at. And this is the question number 5: is do you avoid using tobacco products or other drugs? And so go ahead and put down the number next to that. 1, never. 2, rarely. 3, sometimes. 4, usually. And maybe you're trying to curb that, and maybe you're trying to address some of those things. And that's what what wellness is about. It's by going at your own pace, you know, and just personally looking, at what wellness means to you, you know, uh, and this just kind of gives us, something to look at here. So that's question number 5. Go ahead and put a number down to question number 5. All right, number 6 pertains to diet. Do you eat a balanced diet? A lot of times when we look at wellness, it's looking at balance. It's looking at balance. So a balanced diet can consist of fruits and vegetables, low moderate, low moderate fat, and whole grains. So, what's your diet look like? Maybe that's something to take a look at and kind of keep an eye on. Maybe you want to have a planner of better planning meals of what you eat and what those meals consist of. And so here, question number 6 is just looking at our diet. Do we have a balanced diet of fruits, vegetables, low moderate fat? I don't know why I can't say that today. Low moderate fat, whole grains. Do you eat a balanced diet? Go ahead and put a number next to that. 1, never. 2, rarely. 3, sometimes. And 4, usually. All right, question number 7, and this is the last question that deals with physical wellness here. Do you get a regular physical exam? Uh, Annual exam here, for example, when you have atypical symptoms. Do you get regular physical exams? Um, 1 is for never, 2 is for rarely, 3 are for sometimes, and 4 is usually. You kind of see how all these pertain to physical wellness. As it gives us a better understanding of physical wellness. I think most of us have a pretty good understanding of physical wellness, uh, but I think it's important here to again look at some of these things. I think it's good to do it on a consistent basis too, to go over some of these things and just say, how well am I doing with my physical wellness? Because it's so easy, to put some of these things on the back burner. We know some of these things, but it's different, when I think we bring attention to it. And so that's what's we like to do here with practicing the pause is we can pause and kind of look at these things and say, yeah, well, how am I doing with some of these dimensions of wellness? That's physical wellness. I'll give you a sneak peek of what's next. Social wellness. We'll talk about that next time. But for just a few more minutes that we have left, I kind of want to go over a little bit more about what wellness is, so we can see for ourselves what wellness really means, what it means to us. Why is it important? Why is it important to look at these things? Hopefully, I've been showing that as we've been going along, and you're kind of seeing what wellness really is, and that it is important. I believe wellness is extremely important. It's good to do, to be mindful of it. And so wellness is a lot more than just health. It's a lot more than just health. Um, Health is not just the mere absence of illness. Sometimes we think about health that way, that if I'm not sick, well, I'm well, I'm healthy. Well, that's just not true. Wellness goes on further than that. That it's not just the absence of illness, but it's a continually striving to live a life that's full and meaningful and zestful and exuberant. If you looked at your quality of life, would those words describe your life? That it's full, that it's meaningful, that it's zestful and exuberant. Would that describe your quality of life? That's really what wellness is guiding us to. It's this high level of wellness. we can all have. We can all have that. And it's by looking at this definition of wellness. Wellness extends the definition of health to encompass a process of integration characterized by awareness, education, and growth. And so, like I said, I think it's so important to take the time to learn what wellness is, and to really see how our quality of life is. Uh, I think it's important for us to do, just like the that saying said. This is by Bob Dylan, that he not busy being born is busy dying. What's that? What's your thoughts on that? I like to look at each day as new. Each day is something new that I haven't seen before. You never know what you might encounter during the day. You know, so I like this quote here, that he not busy being born is busy dying. And so I think that we've got some responsibility there to make the best out of our day, and to make good choices, and to practice wellness, and kind of see what that means to us, and how we carry out our life, and the quality of life that we live. And so wellness is never a static state. If I was, really, practicing wellness yesterday, well, that might not be that I'm practicing wellness today. And so I really need to make that conscious decision, just like, recovery. That's the question that I ask for my recovery each day is, what am I doing today for my recovery? So I've got to be mindful of that each day. What am I doing today for my recovery? What am I doing today for my wellness? And so wellness is never a static state. You don't just get well or stay well. It can take work and effort. That's why, I've entitled this course "Practicing the Pause." It takes work. It takes effort. It takes work and effort to dig down deep and discover what our true needs are. Our true needs. We talked about some of this last time. What are some of our true needs? We have a need for, recognition from others. We have a need for a stimulating environment. We have a need for caring and affection from friends. We have a need for a sense of purpose and meaning, and we have a need for self-acceptance. Those are some needs that we have. They're deep underlying human needs that each one of us have. And so, sometimes we battle with these emotional states that we get in, whether it be boredom or depression or anxiety. And these emotional states often set the stage of physical disease through lowering of the body's resistance. And these same feelings can also lead to abuses like smoking and excessive alcohol or drug use and overeating. These symptoms and behaviors represent only the tip of the iceberg. You can see the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, and underlying, or under the water, of that iceberg, the rest of the iceberg that's underwater, is these underlying human needs that needs to be addressed. And so things like smoking and excessive alcohol or drug use or overeating are just the surface indicators of what's truly of part of what's those underlying human needs are, that we just talked about, with recognition from others, and stimulating environment, and caring and affection from friends, a sense of purpose, and self-acceptance. And so diseases and symptoms are like that tip of the iceberg. They're not really the problem. They are actually the mind, body, and spirit's attempt to solve a problem. They're kind of bringing awareness to these underlying issues there. They're a message from the subconscious to the conscious. And so, most hospitals, most doctors, much of contemporary medical practices is involved with chipping away at the tip of the iceberg, that surface needs. Its orientation is towards treatment, treating and eliminating the evidence of disease. And this is important, but it's not enough. Wellness goes much further. Wellness goes and looks beyond the surface. It's essential to look uh, below the surface signs to address the real needs, and that's what wellness can really help us to do. And I think, by these practices that we begin with, practicing the pause with, whether it be mindfulness and meditation, those can help with some of those, and that can bring about some of that healing for those underlying causes and help us with those underlying human needs. And so, wellness, as we just looked at, extends the definition of health to encompass a process of integration characterized by awareness, education, and growth. And it's a journey. That's why I continue to say as I teach this course on wellness that it is a journey. Here you see this illness wellness continuum. And so we're either moving towards high level wellness or we're moving away from it. And when I was, using substances there, I was going towards premature death. We used to say and still do say there, in the rooms of recovery that, I was heading towards three things. There's either institution, jails, or death. Institution, jails, or death. And so you can see that's the signs, symptoms, and disability. A lot of times, folks who use, they're disabled. There's several people that's their substance abuse has caused them disabilities. And so you see it's going away from high level wellness towards premature death there towards the left. And so now in recovery, we want to understand where we are at and then move towards to the right there to the high level wellness. And that's we can do that by awareness, education, and growth. And so health is not the mere absence of illness, but it's a continual striving to live a life that's full and meaningful, zestful, and exuberant. That's the quality of life. And that's what, recovery can really help us to have this quality of life. All right. Well, I think that's a good stopping point for today. Again, I want to thank you all for tuning in, for looking at your own self care and practicing self care and wellness by being mindful of these things, by tuning in here on this Wellness Wednesday for practicing the pause. And we'll look at some more things about wellness and what we can learn and apply to our lives next week. Wednesday at 2 o'clock, next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So I invite you to join in, tune in, tell a friend about it, and write me. Send us a letter there at the R3 Recovery Center if this is really helping you. Maybe there's some topic of interest that you'd like to hear. Feel free to send us those as well. Whatever we can do to help you on your journey into recovery and wellness, we'd be happy to do so. Again, I'm Philip Boyce, a peer support specialist at the R3 Recovery Center for Wilkes Recovery Revolution here in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.